My name is Delia Fontaine and I am 31 years old. 6 weeks ago, my father called me for the first time in 7 years. He did not call to apologize. He called because my younger brother Cade had just been named head wrestling coach at Harwick University, and the school's athletic department had sent a formal letter of commendation addressed to our family. The problem was that the letter referenced a training methodology, a specific 12-week conditioning program, that my brother had submitted to the university as his own original work. It was not his. I wrote it when I was 22 years old, in a spiral notebook with a green cover, sitting on the floor of a gymnasium in Clover, South Carolina, while my father told anyone who would listen that Cade was the one with the real future in this sport. What my father did not know when he called was that I still had the notebook. All 4 of them, actually. Green covers, college ruled, dated in black marker on the front. 112 pages of drills, periodization charts, injury prevention protocols, and the nutritional framework I had developed over 3 years of work. My name was on every page. The dates were on every page. And 8 months before my father picked up that phone, my mentor, Coach Vera Odum, had given me something else entirely, a sealed envelope she had been holding for 4 years, with a handwritten note on the outside that read, "Open this when someone tries to take what is yours." Before I tell you what was inside that envelope, please take a moment to like and subscribe. It helps this channel more than you know. And drop your city and the time where you are in the comments. I love reading those more than I can say. Now let me take you back to the beginning. Back to Clover, South Carolina, and a girl who learned to love a sport that her own family decided belonged to her brother. Clover is a small town in York County, the kind of place where Friday night football fills the bleachers and the grocery store still has a bulletin board with handwritten index cards advertising lawn mowing and piano lessons. My father, Delia Fontaine, coached high school wrestling for 19 years at Clover High. He was not a famous man outside of that county, but inside it, he was something close to a legend. 3 state championships. A trophy case that took up the entire east wall of the gymnasium lobby. His name on a plaque above the door. Delia Fontaine Athletic Complex. They put that up when I was 12, and I remember standing in the parking lot watching them bolt the letters into the brick and feeling something I could not name yet. Something like pride and something like warning, pressed together. My mother, Bet, taught piano out of our living room. She gave lessons on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons, and the house always smelled like rosin and the lemon polish she used on the upright Steinway that had belonged to her own mother. Bet was a gentlewoman, the kind who remembered every student's birthday and kept a tin of butter cookies on the piano bench. She loved my father the way some people love a complicated painting, with admiration and a certain careful distance, never quite sure where to stand to see it right. I was the oldest. Then came Cade, for years younger, blonde and broad-shouldered and born, it seemed, to stand in a gymnasium. Then Penny, 6 years behind me, small and quiet and more interested in horses than any of us. From the time I was 8 years old, I was in that gym. Not because anyone asked me to be. Because I wanted to be. I watched my father run practice, and I took notes in the margins of my homework. I read every book on the shelf in his office: biomechanics, periodization theory, sports psychology. When I was 14, I started helping him chart conditioning cycles for the varsity team. He let me do it because it saved him time. He never said it was good work. He never said it at all. Cade started wrestling at 10. He was decent. Not exceptional, but coachable and strong. My father poured everything into him. Private instruction on Sunday mornings. Film sessions on school nights. A subscription to a national coaching journal that arrived in the mail every month, and my father would hand it to Cade at the dinner table without looking up. Cade would flip through it and set it down. I would pick it up after dinner and read it cover to cover at the kitchen table while Bet washed dishes and the house settled into quiet. I do not say this with bitterness toward Cade. He did not ask for what he was given. He was just the one my father had decided to pour himself into, and children do not choose that. But I noticed. I noticed the way you notice weather. Not by deciding to, just by being outside. There was one person in that gym who noticed me back. Coach Vera Odum had been the assistant coach at Clover High for 11 years when I first really talked to her. She was in her late 50s then, a compact woman with silver hair she kept in a braid and the kind of stillness that made you feel steadied just standing near her. She had wrestled in college, one of the first women at her university to compete in an open division, and she had spent her career building youth programs in 3 different states before settling in Clover. She ran the girls' program, which my father treated as a courtesy operation, a thing you had to have on paper. She treated it like the most important thing in the building. When I was 16, Vera pulled me aside after a Saturday practice and said, "You see things most coaches don't see until they've been doing this for 20 years. You should be writing that down." I told her I already was. She looked at me for a long moment and said, "Good. Keep the notebooks. Date them. Your ideas belong to you." I did not fully understand why she said that until much later. I competed through high school, mostly in exhibition matches since the girls' program was still building its schedule. I was not the most gifted athlete in that gym. But I was the most prepared. I knew the technical vocabulary. I knew how to read an opponent's weight distribution in the first 5 seconds of a match. I knew the periodization science well enough to design a 12-week peaking cycle before I was 18. Vera saw all of it. My father saw Cade. When I was a senior, I applied to 3 universities with strong kinesiology programs. I got into all 3. I chose Winthrop University in Rock Hill on a partial academic scholarship. My father drove me to campus on a Sunday in August, carried 1 box to my dorm room, shook my hand at the door, and said, "Work hard." Then he drove home. I stood in that hallway and listened to his truck engine fade and told myself that was fine. Some fathers showed love through work ethic. Some fathers just had not learned the other language yet. I majored in exercise science. I took every elective I could find in coaching methodology and sports psychology. In my junior year, I started writing seriously, not just notes, but structured frameworks. The 12-week conditioning program came out of a research project I did for my capstone course. My professor, Dr. Elaine Chu, read the first draft and told me it was publishable. I revised it 4 times over 6 months. It was 68 pages. It covered preseason conditioning, in-season maintenance, injury prevention protocols, nutritional periodization, and a psychological readiness framework I had built from 3 years of reading and 2 years of working with actual athletes in the Winthrop intramural program. Dr. Chu submitted it to a regional sports science conference on my behalf. It was accepted. I presented it in April of my senior year to an audience of 47 coaches and researchers. I was 22 years old. I came home that summer. Not because I wanted to, but because I had a job offer from a youth athletic organization in Rock Hill that did not start until September, and the rent on my apartment had ended. 6 weeks at home. I told myself 6 weeks was manageable. Cade was 18 that summer. He had just graduated and was heading to Harwick University on a partial wrestling scholarship my father had spent 2 years cultivating through his coaching network. He was going to study sports management. He was going to wrestle for 4 years and then, my father said at the dinner table on my 3rd night home, go into coaching. He's got the instincts, my father said, cutting his chicken. He just needs the right tools. I did not say anything. I passed the rolls to Penny. That same week, Cade came into my old bedroom while I was organizing my notebooks and asked if he could borrow my capstone project. He said he wanted to read it before he started at Harwick. He said he was trying to get ahead. I handed him the notebook. I did not think twice. He was my brother. He was going to read it and give it back. He never gave it back. I left for Rock Hill in September. I called home twice in October. My mother answered both times. My father was at practice. Cade was at school. Everything was fine, she said. Everything was always fine with Bet. She meant it as comfort. I received it as information. The job in Rock Hill was with a non-profit youth sports organization called the Piedmont Athletic Foundation. I worked with middle school athletes, mostly from low-income families, running after-school conditioning programs. I made $26,000 a year. I lived in a 1-bedroom apartment above a dry cleaning shop on Oakland Avenue, and on Wednesday nights the smell of the cleaning chemicals came up through the vents and I learned to sleep with the window cracked even in November. The work was real. It was the best thing I had ever done. I watched 12-year-olds learn what their bodies could do, watched the particular light that comes into a child's face when they understand they are stronger than they thought. I revised my program for that population. I wrote new frameworks. I filled 2 more notebooks. Vera Odum retired from Clover High in the spring of the year I turned 24. She called me to tell me herself, which meant more than she probably knew. We had stayed in contact, emails mostly, an occasional phone call. She asked if I would come to her retirement gathering at the school. I said yes. I drove back to Clover on a Saturday in April. The gymnasium was full of former athletes and parents and colleagues. My father was there, of course, standing near the trophy case with his arms crossed, looking like a man who had built the room and was tolerating the occasion. He nodded at me when I walked in. That was the greeting. A nod. Vera found me near the bleachers. She was wearing a blue dress and the same silver braid, and she held my hands the way she always had, with both of hers, steady and deliberate. She said, "I'm glad you came. I need to give you something before I forget." She pressed a sealed envelope into my hands. White, letter-sized, my name written on the front in her careful print. On the back, a single line in pencil, "Open this when someone tries to take what is yours." I asked her what it was. She smiled and said, "Insurance." Then someone called her name from across the room and she squeezed my hands once and walked away. I put the envelope in my glove compartment. I drove home to Rock Hill. I put the envelope in the top drawer of my desk, under my passport and my spare checkbook, and I did not open it. Because nothing had happened yet. Because I did not yet know what it was insuring against. I want to pause here for a moment, because I know some of you watching right now have been in that gymnasium. Not literally, but you know what it feels like to be the one who does the work and watches someone else hold the trophy. Maybe it was a sibling. Maybe it was a coworker. Maybe it was someone who smiled at you while they were taking from you, and you did not see it until years later. If that is you, type the word notebook in the comments. Just that one word. I read every single comment, and I want to know you are out there. And if you have not subscribed yet, please do that now. This channel is built on stories like this one, and it grows because of you. Now, back to the story. The next 3 years were the quiet ones. Good quiet, mostly. I built something real at the Piedmont Athletic Foundation. I developed a full curriculum for youth strength and conditioning, 3 age-specific tracks, a coach training module, a parent education component. The executive director, a woman named Harriet Bloom who wore reading glasses on a beaded chain and kept a jar of hard candies on her desk, told me at my annual review in year 2 that I had transformed the program. She gave me a raise to $34,000 and the title of program director. I was 25. I met my closest friend during those years, a woman named Simone Dre who worked as a physical therapist 2 floors up in the same building. Simone was from New Orleans, practical and funny, the kind of person who could read a room in 4 seconds and tell you exactly what was wrong with it. She had grown up watching her own mother be sidelined in a family business, and she recognized the shape of my story before I had finished telling it. She never pushed. She just listened, and when I needed someone to sit across from me at the Thai restaurant on Main Street and say, "That is not right," she was there. I heard from Cade occasionally. Texts, mostly. He graduated from Harwick in 4 years. He had a decent wrestling career, conference champion once, regional qualifier twice. Nothing extraordinary, but respectable. He stayed on at Harwick as a graduate assistant coach. Then as a full assistant. My father talked about him at every family gathering I attended, which by then was Christmas only. Cade was learning the system. Cade was developing his coaching philosophy. Cade was building something. I did not ask what he was building. I told myself it was not my business. Vera Odum died on a Tuesday in November, 3 years ago. She was 67. A stroke, sudden, no warning. Her daughter called me because Vera had kept my number in her address book under the letter D, and the daughter was working through the book. I sat in my car in the parking lot of the foundation for 22 minutes after I hung up. I did not cry right away. I just sat very still and thought about her hands holding mine and the way she always made me feel like the work was worth keeping. I went home that evening and opened the top drawer of my desk. The envelope was still there, under the passport and the checkbook, exactly where I had left it. I sat at my kitchen table and opened it. Inside were 3 things. First, a letter in Vera's handwriting, 2 pages, dated 4 years earlier. Second, a photocopy of a document I did not immediately recognize. Third, a business card for an attorney in Rock Hill named Patricia Wynne. I read the letter first. Vera wrote that she had watched me for years. She wrote that she had seen my notebooks, had read my capstone project when I left a copy in her office the summer I graduated, and had recognized immediately that it was serious, original work. She wrote that she had also seen Cade borrow that notebook. She had been in the hallway. She had not said anything then because she was not certain of what would happen next, and she had not wanted to damage a family over a suspicion. But she had taken a precaution. She had contacted Dr. Elaine Chu at Winthrop and requested a notarized copy of my original capstone submission, including the submission date, my student ID number, and the conference acceptance letter. That was the second document in the envelope, a notarized copy of my original submission, stamped by the Winthrop Registrar's Office, dated April of the year I was 22. My name on the title page. My student ID. The conference acceptance letter with my name and the abstract I had written. Vera's letter ended with one line I have read so many times I could write it in the dark. She wrote, "You built something real, Delia. Real things have records. Keep yours." I held that letter for a long time. Then I called Patricia Wynne's number. I got her voicemail. I left a message. She called back the next morning. Patricia Wynne was a compact, direct woman who specialized in intellectual property and employment law. She had worked with Vera on a property matter years earlier, and Vera had trusted her enough to put her card in that envelope. I met her in her office on a Wednesday afternoon. I brought the envelope, my 4 notebooks, and a folder of emails between myself and Dr. Chu from my senior year. Patricia read everything without speaking for 31 minutes. Then she looked up and said, "This is a clean chain of documentation. If someone has been using this work without attribution, you have standing." I told her I did not know yet if anyone had. I told her I was holding on to it just in case. She nodded and said, "Smart." I drove home. I put the notebooks and the envelope and the folder into a larger envelope, sealed it, and put it in the fireproof box I kept in my closet. Then I went back to work. 6 weeks ago, my father called. I saw his name on my phone at 7:14 in the evening. I was sitting at my kitchen table eating leftover soup. I stared at the name for 4 rings. Then I answered. He said my name. Just that. Delia. Like a test. I said, "Hello, Dad." He told me about the letter. He said Harwick's athletic department had sent a commendation to the family because Cade had been formally named head coach, and the letter specifically praised his innovative conditioning methodology, which the department said had already produced measurable results in the team's injury rates. He said it was a big deal. He said the family was proud. He said he thought I should know. I asked him why he thought I should know. There was a pause. 6 seconds. I counted. He said, "Because you're part of this family, Delia. And this is a family moment." I did not say anything for a moment. Then I asked him to send me a copy of the letter. He said he would. He said it was good to hear my voice. He hung up. I sat at that table for a long time. The soup went cold. I was not angry. I want to be clear about that. Something had gone very still inside me, the same stillness I had felt at Vera's retirement party when she pressed that envelope into my hands. Like a room before the lights come on. He emailed the letter the next morning. I read it twice. The methodology described in the commendation, 12-week periodization cycles, injury prevention protocols, nutritional staging, psychological readiness framework, was mine. Not similar to mine. Mine. The language in 2 paragraphs was close enough to my original text that I recognized specific phrasings I had written at 22 years old, sitting on the floor of a gymnasium in Clover, South Carolina. I called Patricia Wynn. She said, "When would you like to come in?" I went that afternoon. I brought the fireproof box. Patricia reviewed the commendation letter against my original documentation for 40 minutes. She made notes on a yellow legal pad. She did not say much. When she was done, she set her pen down and said, "The overlap is significant. I would call this substantial unauthorized use of original work. The question is what you want to do about it." I told her I wanted the record corrected. Not a lawsuit, not a public spectacle. I wanted Harwick University's athletic department to know the origin of that methodology. I wanted my name on it. I wanted the documentation to exist officially, in the university's files, so that no one could ever again receive a commendation for work they did not do. Patricia said she would draft a letter to Harwick's athletic director and legal office, formal and documented, with the notarized submission from Winthrop, the conference record, the dated notebooks, and a request for a meeting. She said the university would want to handle this quietly. She said they almost always did. I said, "Good. So do I." The letter went out on a Thursday. Harwick's legal office responded within 4 business days. They requested a meeting the following week. Patricia and I drove to the Harwick campus on a Wednesday morning in October. The campus was in a small city in the upstate, brick buildings and old oak trees, the kind of place that looks permanent and assured of itself. We were met by the athletic director, a man named Warren Kell, and the university's general counsel, a woman named Dr. Sandra Obi. They were polite. They were careful. They had clearly read everything Patricia sent. My father was also there. I had not known he would be. He was sitting in a chair along the wall when we walked in, and when he saw me, he went very still. Cade was not there. I learned later that the university had advised him not to attend. Warren Kell opened the meeting by saying that the university took questions of academic and professional integrity seriously and that they appreciated the documentation we had provided. He said they had reviewed the materials and wanted to hear directly from me. I opened the folder I had brought. I did not raise my voice. I did not need to. I walked them through the documentation in order. First, my capstone submission from Winthrop, notarized, dated, bearing my student ID and the signature of Dr. Elaine Chu. Second, the conference acceptance letter from the Regional Sports Science Conference, dated April of my senior year, with the abstract I had written. Third, the 4 notebooks. I had tabbed specific pages, showing the development of the framework from my sophomore year through graduation, all dated in my handwriting. Fourth, a side-by-side comparison Patricia had prepared, showing specific language from my original text alongside language in the materials Cade had submitted to Harwick when he was hired. I said, I am not here to damage my brother's career. I am here because this work has my name on it, and that name was removed. I would like it restored. Warren Kell looked at the comparison document for a long time. Dr. Obi made notes. Neither of them looked at my father. My father had not spoken since we walked in. I looked at him once during my presentation. He was sitting with his hands flat on his knees, the way a man sits when he knows he is in a room where the story is being told correctly for the first time and there is nothing left to do but listen. I want to stop here for a moment, because I know this part of the story is the part some of you have been waiting for. Not the anger. I do not think most of you came here for anger. I think you came here because you know what it feels like to sit in a room and finally say the thing out loud, with the proof in your hands, and have the room go quiet. If you have ever had to prove something that should never have needed proving, type the word proof in the comments. I will be reading them. And if this story is landing somewhere real for you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Now, back to the room. Dr. Obi asked me several questions. She was thorough and professional. She asked about the timeline of Cade's access to my materials. I told her about the summer he borrowed the notebook. I told her he never returned it. I told her I had not thought much of it at the time because he was my brother and I had trusted him the way you trust the people you grew up with, which is to say completely and without evidence. She asked if I had ever communicated the work to Cade in any other form. I said no. She asked if Cade had ever credited me in any context. I said not that I was aware of. Warren Kell said they would need time to review the materials fully and consult with their legal team. He said they would be in touch within 10 business days. He thanked me for bringing the documentation. He shook my hand. As we were leaving, my father stood up. He did not move toward me immediately. He stood by his chair with his hands at his sides and looked at me across the room. His face was difficult to read. It was the face of a man working through something heavy and doing it slowly. He said, "Delia." I stopped. He said, "I didn't know he used it. I want you to know that." I looked at him for a moment. I believed him. That was the strange thing. I believed him completely, and it did not change anything, and it changed everything at the same time. He had not known Cade had taken the work. But he had spent 20 years not seeing the work at all, and that was its own kind of erasure. The two things lived in the same sentence, and I did not know yet how to hold them both. I said, "I know, Dad." He nodded. He looked like a man who wanted to say more and did not have the words yet. I did not wait for the words. Patricia was at the door and the meeting was over, and I had said everything I needed to say in that room. We drove back to Rock Hill. I called Simone from the car and told her how it went. She was quiet for a moment and then she said, "Vera would have loved this." I said, "I know." We were both quiet for a little while after that. Harwick's legal office contacted Patricia 9 days later. They had completed their review. The findings were what the documentation supported. The methodology submitted by Cade Fontaine during his hiring process had drawn substantially and without attribution from original work created by Delia Fontaine, as evidenced by the notarized academic record, the dated conference submission, and the comparative analysis. The university proposed a formal correction to the record. The methodology would be officially attributed to Delia Fontaine as the originating author, with Cade Fontaine listed as a practitioner who had applied the framework. The commendation letter would be amended. A corrected version would be placed in the university's permanent athletic department files. They also asked whether I would be willing to consult with the program going forward, in an official capacity, with compensation. I told Patricia I would think about it. Cade called me 4 days after the university's decision. It was the first time we had spoken in almost 2 years. His voice was flat and careful, the voice of someone who has rehearsed what they are going to say and is not entirely sure it is the right thing. He said he was sorry. He said he had told himself for so long that he was just using it as a reference that he had stopped being honest with himself about what he was actually doing. He said he knew that was not an excuse. I listened to the whole thing without interrupting. When he was finished, I said, "Thank you for calling." I meant it. Not as a performance of graciousness, but because he had called, and that was not nothing. I did not tell him everything was fine. It was not fine. What he had done was a real thing, and real things do not disappear because someone says sorry. But I also did not tell him it was unforgivable, because I did not know yet whether it was. Forgiveness, I have learned, is not a decision you make once. It is something you return to, slowly, over time, like a door you open a little more each year. My father called again 2 weeks later. This time he talked for longer. He talked about the gym, about the years I had spent there, about things I had said and done that he had noticed and never said he noticed. He talked the way people talk when they have been holding something a long time and finally set it down. He did not say he had been wrong to overlook me. But he said he was glad the record was corrected. He said the word proud once, quickly, near the end, and then moved past it as though he had not said it. I did not make him go back to it. I let it stand where he had put it. My mother called the following Sunday. She cried a little. She said she had always known I was the one who understood the work. I told her I knew. She asked if I would come home for Christmas. I said I would think about it. I have thought about it. I am going to go. I accepted Harwick's consulting offer. I negotiated the terms myself, 3 days a month, a rate that Patricia said was appropriate for the scope, and a written agreement that my name appears on all materials derived from the framework. The first session is in January. I do not know yet what it will feel like to walk into that gymnasium under those circumstances. But I know I will bring my notebooks. I always bring my notebooks. The methodology is officially mine now, on paper, in the university's permanent record. My name is on it the way it always should have been. That is not a small thing. For a long time, I thought the work would speak for itself, that eventually people would simply see it and know. But work does not speak for itself. Work needs a record. Vera knew that. She knew it before I did, and she gave me the tools to prove it when the time came. I think about her often. I think about the way she held my hands at her retirement party, steady and deliberate, and pressed that envelope into my palms. I think about the 4 years she kept those documents safe, just in case. I think about what it means to be seen by someone who has no obligation to see you, who sees you anyway, and quietly makes sure the evidence survives. She never got to know what was in that envelope. She never got to see the room go quiet. But she prepared it all the same, because that is what people do when they love you correctly. They do not wait for the crisis. They build the record. They hand you the insurance and they say open this when someone tries to take what is yours, and they trust you to know when that moment has arrived. I keep her letter in the fireproof box now, with the notebooks and the notarized documents and the university's written decision. Everything dated, everything labeled. Not because I am waiting for the next thing, but because Vera taught me that the record is not about the fight. The record is about the truth. And the truth does not need to be loud. It just needs to exist, clearly, with a date on it, somewhere safe. If you are watching this and you have been the one who did the work while someone else held the credit, I want you to hear this: your notebooks matter. Your dates matter. Your documentation matters. You do not have to be loud. You do not have to perform your anger or justify your grief. You just have to keep the record. Because the truth, kept carefully and patiently, has a way of finding the room it was always meant to be in. And if someone in your life saw you when no one else did, a coach, a teacher, a neighbor, an aunt who pressed something into your hands and said, "Keep this. Hold on to that." That person is the reason you are still standing. Tell them, if you can still reach them. And if you cannot, carry what they gave you the way it deserves to be carried. Thank you for sitting with this story tonight. Drop a comment and tell me where you are watching from, and if any part of this landed somewhere real for you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Hit subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.